On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1964. We're going to be taking a look at the Beatles, and they're going to be performing You Can't Do That. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So we have a few videos on the Beatles on the channel so far, but those requests have been to look at Paul McCartney, and we're going to be focusing on John Lennon tonight, and I have isolated the vocal of this live performance so that we can hear the harmony vocals, the lead vocal. I'll jump into the guitar as well. I'm just going to edit this into the video because sadly, a few hours after uploading, it's been blocked on copyrights and it is the audio that has caused the block. So I'm going to edit it. I'm going to try and keep the isolated vocal in there because it's kind of important to reference what we're talking about. But as I say in the video, the link is in the description below if you want to watch the performance so that you can relate that to the things that I'm saying. So I'm going to jump in here because John's about to get into a lead guitar solo and we will break that down as well. But, I mean, what I want to point out about these guys is just the professionalism on stage. I know that on this video, actually, there's a comment at the top that says that, you know, they're not looking at their fretboards, and that's the kind of level that they played at. But I think it is important as well to understand that when you are playing the guitar, you only really need to look at your guitar if you're having large shifts across the fretboard. And what I mean by that is jumping up maybe 5, 6 or 7 frets. You might want to just have a quick look at your guitar just to demonstrate what I'm talking about so that you can now see my guitar neck. We're in this G7 position. I'll take a little bit of that distortion out. And we've got this, actually the little fingers there, supplying that octave of the 7th. But anyway, it means that when we then change over to that C7th chord, we're on the same fret. So you don't really need to look at that. And even, just thinking, I think there's a... No. Again, we have a little shift up. And all of these chords, you can see how, I mean, these guys were so good live and they'd done so much playing live just when they started out and going over to Germany that it's all second nature, that they don't have to look at their guitar, you know, to know that all their chords are going to be there, so they can just concentrate on their singing and, you know, focus on the harmonies as well. But when you do have large shifts, say for example we're playing in G as we have been, and you wanted to go into a lead solo an octave above, this means now you're going to have to take your hand all the way up your fretboard, and when you're playing live in front of a lot of people, you don't want to leave this to chance, just getting up to the right position. So I've taken it back to the beginning and we're going to be having a listen to the isolated vocals now, and looking on the screen you'll be able to see the pitch monitoring software. The yellow line is going to be a representation of those voices that we can hear and John's voice on this pitch graph. And because it's a Beatles performance, obviously there's screaming going on, so it does go a little bit all over the place sometimes, but let's have a listen to these voices.
I've got something to say that might cause you pain. If I catch you talking to that boy again, I'm gonna let you down and leave you flat. Because I told you before, oh, you can't do that. Second time I caught you talking to him. Do I have to tell you one more time? Think it's a sin. I'm gonna let you down. Let you down. Leave you flat. Gonna let you down and leave you flat. Because I told you before, oh, you can't do that.
I'm just going to jump in here because it's great with modern technology that we can now hear the harmony vocals so clearly, and it really shows off the level that the Beatles were at live, considering that they probably didn't have a good on-stage sound, probably ever, because of the amount of screaming going on, but they just always hit their pitches really accurately and they're all singing different lines. This is the point, that they have to focus on themselves and make sure that they sing their own notes correctly. If they get put off by anybody else, it means they're going to start singing what somebody else is singing, and then it's not going to work. So it's just having this independence of not only technique, but just thought to concentrate on what you're doing, obviously playing an instrument at the same time. But let's continue.
Everybody's dream, because I'm the one you love. But if they'd see you're talking that way, they laugh in my face. So please listen to me, you wanna say mine. I can't help my feelings, I go out of my mind. I'm gonna let you down, leave you flat. Gonna let you down and leave you flat, because I told you before, oh, you can't do that.
And we're just about to get into the solo, so that's where we left it before. Now, what I want to point out about John's voice is this rasp that he gets. And I have alluded to it before on the channel in previous videos, but we've never really seen where it is. But now we have the pitch monitoring software on screen. And by the way, this is John's voice. And I've put the piano on screen as well, so we can relate this to ranges. Something that John did was keep his voice in his chest register the whole time. So as he ascended, he didn't allow his voice to go up into his head voice and get a cleaner sound and get lighter. So I'm just going to let it play through so that we can listen to this rasp and at which point it starts to happen.
And help my feelings, I go out of my mind.
And there it is. So when I say at which point it happens, I'm talking about pitch, because when John starts to push his chest voice, I mean, we're getting up into the male tenor range here. You can see F sharp 4. Now, that might not necessarily be a really high note for, a lot of guys, but you will start to be pushing your chest voice once you start to get to this kind of area. So this F sharp, we're talking about, G4, and you'll be able to see on the screen, we've got the piano. So if I come over here, you can see the male tenor range, the G4 that I just mentioned is here, and the A4, the top end of the male tenor range, is here. So we're only 2 notes away. So that's going to be 2 semitones or a tone. It means that John is pushing that vocal register to almost its limit. I know that he could go higher than that, and I suspect that sometimes when he was pushing his voice up there, he'd get this rasp, and it was something that he couldn't necessarily do intentionally right at the top of his chest voice. But here, I think that he's leaning into it and applying rasp a little bit lower than it starts to happen automatically. And you'll be able to hear this on loads of Beatles songs where John is going for it. You hear this rasp to the point where I know that when there were songs that were higher in his range and they might do a lot of performances of that particular song, by the end of those takes in the studio, he starts to just sound raspy all the time because he's losing these top notes, because he's leaning into chest voice the whole time, which nowadays everyone refers to as belting. So it's interesting that on the piano we can point out pretty much where John's voice used to transition into a raspier sound. He's not transitioning into a different vocal register. For example, let's have a listen to that phrase again.
Help my feelings, I go out of my mind.
So what he's not doing is going, I can't help my feelings, I go out of my mind, and doing that. So starting to get into a lighter head voice sound because you're going higher and the notes become more difficult. He's going, I can't help my feelings, I go out of my mind, like that, leaning into it. And you can really hear the difference there. I don't know whether that would have clipped on the microphone, but you can hear the difference in expression. And that's what it's all about. By keeping the higher notes in chest voice, there's more drama in it. There's more emotion in there. I do want to point out a little bit about just the rhythm guitar going on here, the chords. It's not going to be an instructional video, but it's difficult to place whether this is George's guitar playing it or whether it's just a kind of cheeky bit of keys going on somewhere at the side of the stage, maybe, a quiet organ, it's really low in the mix, but we have this G, and we get this almost like a hammer on there, and And you'll be able to hear that going on now and again. It's not a regular thing, but those are the notes. So you might have George doing that, and you might have, well, you definitely do have John playing his chords there. And you'll be able to hear that kind of upstroke happening quite a lot as well. As we then get into that C7th, back, and that's the G7th with the octave here, and then we jump into this, this shape is effectively going to be your 7th, and this is the D7th, by the way, the D7th, but it's got that raised 9th in there. So effectively what you've got is, it's a bit of a contradiction of a chord, because you've got your major 3rd in there. So that's a major chord is how we start out, and that raised 9th is going to make it sound a little bit minor. It's got attitude. So, I mean, this raised 9th that we have here, if we were to play an actual D minor, exactly the same note. So we're pairing that note from the minor chord with the major 3rd underneath. So, yeah, really cool chord. I think people refer to this as the Jimi Hendrix chord, but the Beatles are using it. Of course, everybody uses chords and nobody owns one particular chord. It's great as well that in the background we have Paul and George supplying the harmony vocals while the guitar's going on. So they're just filling in the sound as much as possible underneath the guitar. We do unfortunately have the curse of the producer here, where he's not going to a camera that is actually watching the guitar solo, so all we can do unfortunately is just hear it. So straight away we can hear that John's in his minor pentatonic shape 1 here. It actually starts with a little bend, and then he kind of gets into this bend here. So, and it's all played really straight. Actually, I'll just take it back. We'll have another listen to that. Yeah. Just coming over with that 3rd finger to the 1st finger. And let me just point out, there's a lot of lead guitar technique going on here, hitting the right strings, keeping the other strings muted so that when you do play those notes together, we don't have all of those other ones ringing out. And that's a huge part of lead guitar technique, is keeping the other strings you don't want to hear quiet. And that's achieved by palm muting with the right hand, just resting on them with your left hand while you're playing at the same time. This is another thing to point out, that the Beatles songs, I mean, so many of them had lead sections in there, but the lead guitar playing was never really advanced. It wasn't kind of a million notes a second and, vibrato and all that kind of stuff, but doesn't matter. It didn't matter, because the point of a lead solo is to fit the mood of the composition that is being played for. And with the Beatles songs, there was never a solo, and I don't think there is a solo, where I've heard it being played and then thought, oh, that doesn't suit the song. If anything, just the way that the lead guitar solos are being played suits the personality of the band. Just by being so straightforward, but, being melodic, having this kind of robust technique that John is showing us here. But let's listen on. You can't do that. You can't do that. And here we have, strumming going on, but I want to point out the technique, because when we come up to here, that's what John's doing. He's applying this rhythm with the right hand, but there's a lot of muting going on here just to keep it clean. I'm going to do this without the muting, and this is what it sounds like. So again, a great indication of the amount of technique that's going on in order to just hear those 3 strings. And even there, where we had that slide down, John has taken the B string out of operation because it's not going to fit if he keeps that same shape. So that little slide down, if you kept that first finger in there, that would be the result. Again, really subtle technique here, just keeping all of the notes relevant and getting us to hear all of the notes that he wants us to hear, and not the ones that we don't, and just keeping those out of the equation and muting. He actually goes down into his minor pentatonic shape again because he's sliding down now into this position. And here, he's now doing these bends on his 5th fret and just barring with that first finger. B string, high E string on the 3rd fret. Again, lots of technique here. And this technique of, playing the bends, really common technique, but you don't just have the ability to do this straight away. To keep everything clean, to keep everything quiet, takes a hell of a lot of practice. Now, I'm not entirely sure. Well, I have a suspicion of what Paul might have been laughing at there. As we take it back, John did a bend on the guitar that I wouldn't say you normally do. Let's have a listen. Actually, we'll take it back. There. That, instead of going, he kind of goes and does the bend on the D string rather than the G string. And it might be something that Paul just heard and he knew what it should have been, but is obviously laughing at the fact that it's a little bit wrong. But, it still works because, doing the bend up there, it's not a disaster, but it's just something a little bit unexpected. And we have this little, little run down, that minor pentatonic shape. It's interesting that, Paul is laughing in exactly the right place where that bend happened. But it's great to have a look at the Beatles. I mean, pretty much any time. Considering that we now have this technology to isolate vocals, it's great to hear those even more clearly and just dive into John's voice a little bit more as to where his voice changed, that ability to add rasp that he had, but also in this particular performance, break down his guitar and look at the lead technique that he had and the ability to fill a lead section. It's by no means an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of practice, even just playing notes straight, just to keep your guitar clean. But anyway, thank you guys for suggesting and requesting this video for me to take a look at. Keep those coming in the comments section below. As always, let me know what you guys think. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!